Hi everyone, you're listening to our program called Mind Energy, Be Inspired by the Momentum. I'm Katarina Kulikowska, and motivation is a thing that some people are supposed to be must needed everywhere with every person and in each moment. But for some group of people, it seems to be very hard to deal with some kinds of motivation and inspiration, and it seems to be very hard to understand what is it and how we can deal with it. But I'm very pleased to announce that today we have guests who will help me to prove it to yourself, but maybe not just prove, just we will try to explain you that it's not as hard as some people can think. So, first of all, I think that you can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Marco. I'm studying international business. I'm originally from the United States, and I studied in Arizona.
That's super interesting. Hi, I'm Adam.
Thank you.
I'm from Poland, and I study international relations, and I'm the host of the Convo. Take a listen.
And to begin with, if we speak about motivation, what do you think is the best motivation for students?
For me, it's always been for me for a while. Like since I've started studying, it was my parents stressed it to me to always do well in school. So every time, if I'm gonna do something, I might as well do it to my best ability. And I love learning, so it's kind of become easy for me to be motivated to do projects or schoolwork or come to class because I enjoy it.
Well, my answer is a bit more or less cliche than that. My answer is basically, well, I'm in school, I pay for it, and it's my future on the line. So if I don't do well, then it's basically I'm the one who's future me is gonna have to pay the consequences, and I don't want that. And well, school is a very important part of life, and it's not just a slogan. It is, actually. So it motivates me because, well, first of all, there's also a certain degree of respect I have towards the academia. I want to show up on time. I want to show up to classes. Also, there's the financial part. I pay for it. But it's also because there is a lot of things out there that I don't know. And we students think we know everything, so therefore we're a bit narcissistic, and therefore we don't have the motivation, because why should we improve if we're perfect already? But I am not. So
I have a cool question for you.
Oh, go ahead.
If you paying for it, so like you're in a country where you don't have to pay as a Polish citizen for school. If you went to like a public school,
Yeah.
would you still have that motivation?
Yeah, because if I don't do well in school, then in theory they can replace me with somebody else. Because if it's public, that means they're just taking a certain sample of the population. And if one person is basically hogging the place, hogging the space, in a university, they can kick him out, because if you're in a private university, paying is essentially the money is basically your bench warmer.
So it's also a bit like competition, like you're competitive to keep that place. Yeah, me too.
#me too.
But if we try to make some steps out of school, what do you think can motivate and inspire students out of it?
So to make steps like outside of school?
Yes.
Marco, you're supposed to come prepared. Okay, so basically my answer is, because I am prepared. So a good way to be motivated is, well, I'm telling you what works for me. This might not work for everybody, because we are all different. We're not, we're all not all the same. So one thing that works for me is basically I do not have self-esteem. I'm not saying I have low self-esteem, because what is esteem? The definition of esteem is to regard with admiration. So if you have self-esteem, what do you regard yourself with admiration? I have in myself what I have is I coined the term myself. It's actually something to do with narcissism. It's progressive narcissism, unsatisfactory narcissism, actually, because I like what I know already, but I'm unsatisfied with it. So I have a constant pursuit to perfect myself. And that it requires me either from getting up, from bed and just doing something, or just, if I want to write an essay, I know that I could be better by finishing it already. So that's what drives me, essentially.
I guess to add to that, I would say, like for me, there's certain like I guess you could break it up in two groups: organic motivation, where like yes, I need to eat or I need to do certain things internally, but then there's external motivation, where I like, for instance, go to the gym. I want to continuously better myself, where I do like I read or watch things that continuously better myself, like either be documentaries or read books about professions, so I can see if I'm interested in that in terms of external future goals of mine. For me, motivation works if you set goals and then you achieve those small goals and you build on those goals.
But don't you think that sometimes it's very important not to maybe make a further step, but to feel the moment that we have now, not to be so programmatic, to sometimes think what will be next and continue it.
See, the problem with students is that we're extremely simple creatures, and by that I mean we are driven only by the fact that we want to see results immediately. If we don't see results, that means our what do we like to think, advanced minds that tell us that, oh, this is not working. But what students don't realize, and I'm a student myself, and I didn't realize that until I did, but generalizing, students don't have motivation because they are driven by something that presents immediate results. And if something does not give them immediate results or a good feeling, like you said, then they immediately dismiss that option and they basically throw it in the bin because they say, oh, this is not working. But in many cases, the certain steps are necessary because they have there are long-term perspective, and in the future they will benefit you. If it's not like students want to have motivation, just like, for example, student life, say alcohol. They want immediate results. They want to immediately feel better about themselves, but they don't understand in many cases that for you to actually accomplish a certain amount of motivation in the future, you have to let it just work.
But I think you just like answered your own. You kind of just contradicted yourself because you're saying, well, students only want things right away.
Yeah.
But yet, as being a student, you're doing something that will help you in the future, and you're realizing that by going to school, you're not getting a degree just to sign up and pay the fee. You have to do certain things for a certain amount of time, and then you get that benefit.
I don't see how I contradicted myself, though.
But you're saying students...
I'm saying students want to have immediate results from whatever they do.
Yes.
So, for example, here's my example. If a student, a simple-minded creature like a student, has a book, 500-page book, for example, and he reaches one page, he says, oh, well, this didn't make me smarter. Okay. But no, you actually have to get to the end. So you have to have a long-term investment into something for you to actually get some sort of knowledge out of it, get some sort of benefits out of it. That's what I'm saying.
I think a lot of people realize that, though.
Yeah, but they realize it after it works, after they actually put in the time into something.
Okay. But to answer you, I think, for me to answer your question from my point of view, is that it is, for me, like, I do try to live in the moment and enjoy things, but I also have to keep part of my mind on what I want in the future and continuously work towards that. And because it wouldn't be, I think, rewarding if I were just to focus on things I want in the future and not enjoy what's happening in the present.
But on the other hand, I think that it's a good motivation for students because they want it now and they are more motivated maybe than adults, that are thinking in a perspective that we will have something in a year or 5 years, and they will put more efforts now and at that moment, but not thinking about what will be next.
I mean, I like to think that, but when maybe that's what they think. But when it comes to their actions, we don't see that. How many times am I in class, every day, where people are legitimately half an hour late, where they are, for example, talking during class, where they're not paying attention? What drives them to completing this school? I think it's just the fact that they're going to get some sort of degree. And I think this is the problem, that we have such credentialism nowadays that it's not what you know, but it's what your paper says, what your diploma says that you know. So I think that students here are mainly driven to come to class because they know that they have to, not because they want to. Because if they want to, they would always be 5 minutes before class, 5 minutes after class to ask any questions, do all their homework, not talk during class, not talk with their friends, not be on their phones. I'm sorry, this is academia. You're adults. If you don't know how to do it by now, well, something's wrong with you, and I'll be controversial like that. Marco?
I would say that I agree with you that there are plenty of students, but I think that it's also for the teacher that what motivates them to continuously come here. If it's just full of those type of students, I think there are a handful of those students, but majority of the students, at least that I've experienced, don't have that like lack of motivation to show up. I think a lot of them do because they see the outcome, they understand why they're here, and they're willing to do those little steps to make that future outcome possible. But yeah, I think, but also it's like, why would if it's all about the degree, what your degree has, then people would do like be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. Like you wouldn't have these soft sciences that you have. I think part of what drives people get to say soft science is because they enjoy what they're learning. And it's all part of the process.
But apart from that fact, there is something in the university what can motivate you. And here at Collegium Civitas, I think, is our radio. And to explain for our audience, maybe somebody don't know, but maybe know, that you are host of our program, the Convo. And what has motivated you to do it, to make a program?
Well, actually, it was one time, I think, over a beer or something like that, or over some water, we don't remember. Well, if we don't remember, then it answers our question. But here's the thing. I think one day we just realized that, oh man, we have some pretty interesting topics. We talk about things that people like us just enjoy hearing, I guess. And by enjoy hearing, I mean it's something that people usually... The reason why people like to converse with us, and we just came into the radio one day. We knew that there was something like the radio, and we thought that let's reach to a further group of people. We weren't motivated by let's get famous. Let's make a name for ourselves or something. Let's get some benefits. No, we were just like, this is an interesting we can try. And trying something new, I think, is the core of motivation. If throwing yourself into the deep end, throwing yourself into a certain area that you are uncomfortable with, in a certain area that you're not familiar with, will motivate you to adjust to it. And human beings, in human nature, we have an incredible capacity for adjustment. So I think that's my side of the
I agree with you, that's a core motivation, but I think there's also the motivation that it's like a cool thing to say you're doing or you've done, like to be on... say you did a podcast or radio, and also have it as an accomplishment and put on your CV or resume. It's I think a distinctive and unique reward to do. But it's also like, because it gets you out of your comfort zone, because we have, I think, good topics that we discuss every week. It makes it fun and interesting to do.
You said that in one moment is like going out of your comfort zone, and so as far as I understood, you think it's good to be out of your comfort zone rather than stay in it and to enjoy what you have.
Well, yes, and this can be a literal example. It's more comfortable to stay in your bed, but you have to get out of it in order to do some, to have some progress in your life. And that's literally, like, you're in your comfort zone in your bed, but you know that outside of it, you actually have to put on some pants, do some work. And that work is rewarding, because the moment you get back in your comfort zone, you feel, whoa, I've been out there, I done something with myself, and I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I think change is constant in life, and you have to embrace it in order to get anywhere in life. And so, like either getting out of bed or pushing yourself to do something different that's not in your comfort zone, I think it's always rewarding, because you're going to eventually, even if you don't push yourself, you're going to eventually find yourself in a situation or position where you're uncomfortable. So I think if it's more voluntary, then it's probably better.
But at the same point, do you think that it's important to motivate yourself that you will have a reward rather than maybe just enjoy the process of achieving your goals and achieving that line that you have? Like, I mean, to work for something,
I mean,
not to just...
I have one tip that always works for me when it comes to, maybe not so much as it's not the recipe for motivation, but it certainly helps me it prevents me from basically going back into my comfort zone. And then coming again to the bed example, whenever I get up, the first thing I do after I put my phone away, the first thing I do is I make my bed. So I achieved something already today. I did something. And second of all, if I get back into bed, I ruin the first thing I achieved. So it's something good, because you don't want to get back into bed, meaning you don't want to get back into your comfort zone with the price of you actually destroying something that you've done, and that motivates you to get started with the day. Make yourself some breakfast, wash your facial, whatever, So I think that's my tip. That's what gets me up in the morning. I don't drink coffee, so for you all to say, oh well, it's impossible to do with coffee. Well, I'm here somehow. Tea for me.
For me, it's to experience something. Like for me, it wouldn't be a problem to like mess up my made bed, because like that's just like I can just do it again. But to like experience something I wouldn't experience by just being in bed, and like having new and exciting opportunities to get out of that comfort zone, and like get that thrill of kind of being out there is motivation enough for me.
But what do you think when is the situation when student, for example, he or she realizes that he or she must move toward to he or she goals, to the future, but there is no power and there is no energy, and maybe he tried a lot of sources, be motivated by music, be motivated by films, and then what has came to the mind is a motivation by other people. Do you think that is good, or rather it's bad, because it's examples of other people and a good examples of their lives, not yours?
I think a little bit of that is like competition. I think that's good, because for me personally, I'm a bit of a competitive person, so it does motivate me to like, I can do better than that, or I can do better than them. But then if say I fail at doing that, I think it's also important to understand, look back and see what the failure was, and then don't lose that motivation, even though sometimes it is hard for me to like be remotivated to do something that I've failed at. Because if you know what your end goal is and you're still committed to that, then still, even with failure or with issues that arise, to continue to, and that also means having good people around you when you do lose that motivation, because they can pick you up and tell you to keep going.
I mean, of course, people around you is a good source of motivation. For example, if all your friends are going for a run, you have that social pressure into, okay, fine, I don't want to be worse, so it's also with that competition. So I'm gonna go run, despite though I'm gonna throw up along after. But what I think is most important is that motivation comes from within. If you have the energy to convince yourself that you're unable to do something, or that I prefer to stay in bed, you have that energy. So direct that energy somewhere else, because that's where it comes from. It's you that is telling yourself, oh, I can't do that. But how about you shift that around? I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but you have the potential within yourself to do anything you want. And I'm not saying like, oh, fly, but realistically, you want to do something, go for it. Nothing is stopping you. Nobody out there is telling you, no, you can't do this. Well, I mean, I'm not talking about legal stuff, right? But what I'm saying is, I want to go for a run. What stops me? Oh, all these unreal like challenges, like, oh, that means I have to get home. That means I have to change. Wow. If those are the kind of barriers that are stopping you from achieving what you want, then I'm sorry, there's no hope for you.
No, I mean,
No, I'm kidding, but like that's just scandalous. That's ridiculous for you to tell yourself that you're unable to do that because you're unable to change the channel on your TV because the remote control is a meter away. That's the kind of situation in people's lives. They have everything they need, but it's them that is the problem, not their environment. And I'm talking about normal cases. I'm not talking about the extremes. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about day-to-day basis today. I want to get a coffee. Oh, well, I don't drink coffee, first of all. I want to get a tea. Oh, no,
thing.
but it's so far away. Like, what kind of excuse is that? I'm sorry. Here's the thing. I always think of myself, if I told my excuse in regards to someone else, what would their facial expression be? If I told Marco right now, I didn't go running because I couldn't find my good socks. He would probably collapse on himself because what kind of excuse is that? You know, it's that easy. All the energy you need is in you. It's in your mind.
I think also like to, even if you say like, oh, let's go drinking, instead of even though you might have like a test or something to do the next day, that's also very important. I think if you believe in the people that are inviting you out, and not like maybe being able to like say no, not today, but because I need to do this because this goal, this motivation is my primary. Hoping that they also have there's also going to be those future attempts, future opportunities to hang out with those people is also good.
Yeah.
And if we speak about people surrounding ourselves, from your perspective, do we determine ourselves or our surrounding determine ours?
I mean, I think it's I think it's both. It's the nature and nurture situation. So nature is who we are, genetically, biologically, blah, blah, blah. And nurture is how our environment molds us, how our society molds us. So, of course, if you're in a society that, for example, doesn't run and prefers to party, there's a higher chance, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there's a higher chance of you actually being susceptible to that particular lifestyle. But I think in Warsaw, at least from my perspective, we do have a pretty diverse society in a way that a lot of people are motivated to do this, to do that, and there's always something to do here. Also, the people in Warsaw are fairly active, I would say. There's tons of events every day, either on Facebook or billboards, whatever. So we are a pretty active society, active as in we motivate ourselves to spend time with each other. So even, for example, if it's me inviting people over to my house, it's not like I'm being lazy because I'm in my house, but I'm actually putting myself out there to socialize. So I have to adhere to certain social, norms. I have to get dressed. Well, depends on the crowd, but I'm just saying, I think we do have a pretty progressive and, in a positive way, motivating society around us.
I think it is a nurture and nature. Thank you. But I think first, nurture is far more prominent on your outcome. But nature is something like, yes, you can be greatly affected short term by nature, but it's something as humans we definitely have the ability to change and alter to our own needs at that time. And sometimes it does seem like it's overwhelming, but if we have the nurture, then there's definitely a more ability to change that nature part of our motivation.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Magical sound for you. And let's try maybe to move to the end, and if you can, to give our students maybe some tips, some maybe, let's just say some words which could inspire them, not maybe in one moment, but maybe in a long perspective. So if you could, for our students, but maybe not even Collegium Civitas, but all around the world, not only in Warsaw?
I think as a student or someone who is maybe not a student even, that if you're wanting to achieve something and you're not lacking the motivation, I think for me, it works best is setting short-term, easily attainable goals and achieving those goals and then continuing on to that, not being dissuaded by failures or other things that come up that may block you, but having this hope and this long-term goals is something that's worked for me in my life. It's led me to places like Poland and to get out of my comfort zone and travel and get degrees. So wanting to continuously improve and wanting to continuously learn and meet new people, it's always a fun experience, and it can be challenging, but it's definitely rewarding.
My tips, 3 I can think of right now is do your bed after you get out of bed. Don't make you hate yourself at the end of the day. So don't do things that will affect you in the future. Basically, don't do things that you might regret. You never know what things might be. But if you know something is a bad idea, don't do it. Because if you know you should be studying, don't go out. Because, okay, even if, for example, you don't get as good of a grade, you at least said no to something. And saying no to something is something that students have to understand. And third thing I can think of right now is don't let your previous achievement be an excuse for not doing your second one. And that is important because a lot of us are we have an epiphany and we're so proud of ourselves that we did one thing that we're saying like, oh, I did that already. I don't have to do anything more. No. That's exactly the excuse for you to do something else. You know? That's what I'm saying.
If I could just add one thing to what you said. But I said, like, saying no to something can be very empowering to you. Like, it's denying that short-term, say, satisfaction, but in realization of that long-term goal.
Yeah, exactly.
So, our listeners, I encourage you not maybe just forget about some excesses, maybe to not focus on the results maybe sometimes, but on what you are doing now. And of course, try to go out of your comfort zone by making a short-term goals. And thank you for our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.